The ABS, it is here, it is ready to go, and we have had spring training games. They are underway, and we've already seen this thing in action. But a lot of people don't fully understand how it is changing the strike zone itself. And as we like to do here in the media now, is predict what we think is going to happen when something changes. So someone is going to benefit from this new technology. Usually it's either the batters or the pitchers. Some side is supposed to get some advantage, or it's supposed to even things out in some way. But the big problem this new technology solves is the thing that most fans and pretty much everyone who watches the baseball players included, say, and that's just get the damn calls right. If we get more damn calls right, then I think we're collectively happier as a whole. If you don't know this, the ABS, for the people in the know, that's the automated balls strike system for the normies that are tuning in for the first time. And it'll help us get a little bit closer to row bumps without fully going to a robot standing there or a camera doing all of our work for us, which I think would be a major misstep, and I'm glad this is the way we're doing it. Series of challenges, you can say, I think that's a ball, or I think that's a strike, if you're a pitcher or a hitter or a catcher, or I believe those are the three guys who have to make the signal, and then it is up for review, and it's very quick. It doesn't slow the game down, and it's theoretically supposed to help us get better at getting balls and strikes right, because that was, I think, the last frontier when it comes to getting calls correctly in games. We want as many as we can within reason, with some sort of human error, because there are players that are humans playing against other players that are also humans, and having some umpires making some of the calls keeps the human element in the game, and we need to please keep some humanity in some things, because as we very much know, if you've ever turned on the news, a lot of stuff's becoming very automated. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. But first we gotta establish what is a strike, okay? And this story was based on a couple of stories put out by some really good reporting over The Athletic, as it often is. We're going to be referencing an article by Eno Saris, Dan Hayes, and C. Trent Rosencrantz. We do some statistical analysis on what pitches may be helpful and what players are going to benefit the most. But the basics for the reporting for this article was done by Jason Stark, also in a full breakdown. You should read it. If you haven't read it, I will leave the link to that article in the comments below this as well, so you can check it out if you haven't yet. But just really doing an in-depth analysis of what the ABS is and what are the nuts and bolts on how they make decisions and so on and so forth. So first we have to establish what is a strike. And a lot of you may not know what a strike is. You know, maybe it's what the umpire says. That's what it's classically been for a very long time. Whatever the umpire says is a strike. Maybe it's the box on the TV that you're all used to seeing and be like, that's not in the zone, that is in the zone. Now, every single broadcast handles that differently. Sometimes it is more dynamic. Sometimes it's just the same box for everybody. And no matter where the camera is, sometimes it's offline and it could just be completely wrong. That's usually not a great sign either. And it's not for getting the calls right either. So that might be a big issue too. So which thing is a strike? There are actual rules and there are standards that are supposed to be applied when calling strikes. So this circle has historically been what a strike is. Now, you might be wondering, that doesn't look like a box. Well, remember, humans. We have humans, and there's always been this little buffer zone around the edge, called the buffer zone, where you won't get penalized if you call it a strike or a ball. But this is what happens with human vision. You look at a spot, and you're trying to see a perfect square in space in front of you. It turns into a little bit of a amorphous blob a lot of times. So that is what we're seeing. Now, the ABS zone is a perfect square. The ABS zone is being established by the cameras that are already in the stadiums called Hawkeye. Hawkeye does all StatCast stuff. It tracks the ball, it tracks the players, knows where everybody is, and now that technology is being deployed to track the strike zone, which makes sense because strike zone's pretty static. It's in the same place every time. You think that would be pretty easy, though it is going to be changing sizes based on the guys hitting. We'll talk about that in a moment, but that's very interesting. But this is what the strike zone used to be, and then that is what it's supposed to be, and hopefully is. Now, the umpires are going to call the vast majority, so the zone is going to be this red line most of the time, but when in doubt, we can always get it within the box. Honestly, the fact that these two shapes are even pretty close to the same size is about what we're looking for. So this is what a strike is, okay? And we are hoping to change what that means, all right? So now the official zone is this. So now this is what the ABS zone is in 3 dimensions, okay? A lot of people don't, they all know about the box and that it's 17 inches across. Obviously the box is 17 inches in width and the height is going to be what we call dynamic, all right? So 17 inches width, that is the plate. That is the width of the plate. Simple, right? Makes a lot of sense. Buffer zone, who cares? ABS doesn't need a buffer zone because there's no human beings. So we're just gonna make it the width of the plate. That makes a lot of sense. I will say this, it was floated to maybe add the buffer zone, add an inch to the edges. That got scrapped really quickly because that was added because of humans. Why would we add that into the non-human version? Then we have the top and the bottom. So the height of the box is going to be changing dynamically. And it's very, very interesting on how they decided to do this. Now, this is one of the big reasons that this took a long time to put in play because they couldn't figure out exactly what this is. So the numbers we came up to is the bottom of the zone is 27% of that hitter's height, not measured in real time, like based on crouches and stuff. You can't like squeeze yourself and make it smaller. It's based on what your official height is. So if you think about it, it's not as advantageous as a hitter to lie about how tall you are now for the first time in history. So we might see some guys' heights going down a little bit this year. If I were you, I'd think about it, guys. Maybe take an old hit to the pride just to get maybe a couple more balls. I'm just spitballing here, but the door is open. Might as well walk through it. And then the top is 53.5% of a hitter's height. Now that you may be wondering, where is that? Well, the nice thing about these 2 measurements is they're based on your full height, so it doesn't matter if you're a long-legged person or a short-legged person, long torso, whether or not your letters are up near your neck, where your shoulders are, whether or not you crouch or whatever, it's standardized from guy to guy. Now, you could be affected by if you crouch into your zone or whatever, like that could affect your ability to hit the ball, but that's up to you. That's something you got to deal with. This is a good way to standardize it. And then, where is the zone at? Where is the box that is the zone? It is halfway back on the plate, right where the plate turns into the point. When it becomes the point, the back side of the plate is where the zone starts. So, what does this all mean? First, you gotta know a couple things, some interesting things about this, okay? How these decisions were made, because I know anecdotally, having talked to some of the people involved in this process, because you remember, this was tested for 2, 3, 4 years in independent ball and then into minor leagues, okay? I myself in 2023 was one of the people that got to be part of the testing process in Salt Lake for one of the ABS games. It was only on the weekends they did ABS, and I was told explicitly, good luck finding the top of the strike zone. We don't know where it is because it's changing, because they were changing this number all the time and trying to get things to make more sense and figure out exactly where the fairest version of that is, so no one got an advantage for being tall or short or whatever. Or the pitcher didn't get a huge advantage mostly. So there's question about each one of these things and how they had to kind of figure it out. One, I already mentioned it, was should we just make this a hard line on the edges or should we include the buffer zone? That was an easy one. They just said, sure, let's just do the hard line. It's gonna be the width of the plate. It's easy, it makes sense, and that's in the rule book. Let's just go with that. They didn't need to work on that one much. But number 2 is, where should the top and the bottom be? We don't know. This is what took so long. So like one of the questions, should this just be static? Should we do it the same for everybody? Should we just say, it's this tall and this tall? And they quickly said, well, that's gonna greatly disadvantage some guys and that's gonna advantage others. And that's standardized, sure, and it's fair in a standardized way, but it's not fair for every body type, so maybe that's not good enough. So maybe we should go letters to knees, which creates a little bit of a dynamic, but how do we figure out where that is? Do we take in their crouch or whatever? So that got complicated really quickly. Do we take in their height or their crouch or whatever if we just try to go letters to knees, which is the traditional way of thinking of it. That's what it's always been, not in the rule book, but just like in common knowledge. Letters at the top zone, knees at the bottom. Little league, you guys have all been there. Big leagues is probably a little bit below the letters, but it's the premise still stands. But again, a little bit too vague, a little too hard to establish for each guy in real time. So the last question was, okay, then if that's not what it is, how are we gonna do the measurements then? Well, percentages of official heights, those are standardized, and so it does increase the zone for a big guy and decrease the zone for a small guy, but it doesn't give a huge advantage either way. So it's not a huge difference between a very tall guy and a small guy how big their zone is, though it is slightly different, which means it's adjusted, but it's not giving an advantage. I think they found the sweet spot with this which we're going to see a diagram soon that illustrates this really well. And all of these were provided by Major League Baseball and The Athletic, just throwing that out there. Then we got to figure out the zone changes, all right? So like, let's talk a little bit about the difference in height first. Okay, we have Jose Altuve, who's 5'6", maybe 5'5". I'm going to be honest here. He might be 5'5" this year. It might, like I said, might be in your best interest. His total zone is a foot and a half, or a foot 5 inches tall. Aaron Judge, on the other hand, is a foot and an inch taller, but is only going up bigger than 4 inches. So, by it being percentage of their height, this thing gets dynamic and it gets a little bit bigger and changes hitter to hitter, but it's based on whatever their height is before. So there's nothing that needs to read the hitter in real time. That's positive because technology probably could do that, but that's going to make it prone to errors. So it's static, but it's standardized, but it does change. I think that's the sweet spot. That's why they decided to choose to do it this way, which I find very interesting and probably, I agree, it's probably the best way to do it. I'm glad that they found a good way to do it, but this is how the zones are going to change for these two guys. And then the third thing they had to consider is, should we make this box, if it's halfway to the plate, halfway across the plate, or if it's the full plate, are we going to make like a plate-shaped, a 3D object where it can go through and touch? Or are we going to make it a 2D object where it's just a box that has to touch it? So with the box being in the middle of the plate, conceivably, a pitcher could clip the front of the plate and not get a strike called in the ABS. It could be over the plate at some point, but it moves before that hits that box and it's not over the plate. That could conceivably be called a ball in ABS, and that is going to happen. But what it does do is creates another standardized version. It's just a box that's changing, not a 3D object with volume in real time, which, as you can imagine, with the instruments that they're using and the technology they're using, it could get kind of messed up and things could get a little bit wonky and it could be hard to calibrate and hard to be extremely accurate. So the conclusion they came up with was, you know what, the trade-offs, there's going to be more value. Yes, the idea that somebody can throw a sinker and it moves so much that it moves enough to move off the plate, even though it clipped the very front of the plate in 8 inches, sure. But the chances that happens really consistently are really low, and the chances that the other way will mess up a lot is high. So the trade-off is maybe we just keep the standardized, everyone just accepts that's the way it is, and it's flawed. Of course, everything's gonna be flawed. There's no perfect system, but this is the way to do it, and that's why they likely decided to go against having the 3D version and going with the 2D version, which, again, from what I've been told anecdotally from people that are familiar with the situation, it was a lot of back and forth about that. A lot of calibrating instruments, a lot of trying to get it right. That's why it took so long to do. So we've established the strike zone now is different than the strike zone was last year. It just is, right? It's just gonna be different. And in a lot of ways, smaller, because technically these heights right here are generally going to be a little bit smaller. It's so standardized that you're not going to get those high calls called much and those low calls called much, because they're going to say, one, if I get this wrong, we always have ABS and they can do it. So I'm going to try to be conservative here and not get crazy, not call balls strikes, because we can always fix it. So that's one thing that's going to change. And then secondly, it's dynamic. So like crouching and all this like little things you're trying to do to fool the umpire, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work as well, because they're going to be like, I don't have to make calls like that anymore. I have to just keep my eye on what the space is I'm looking for in front of me, and that is also going to change things as well. Anecdotally, though, across the league, everyone says effectively the top of the strike zone is going to be gone, and there's data to prove it. There's data to prove it, and that's something I experienced as well. It's the first thing I noticed actually when I pitched in my AAA rehab was I didn't know where the top was. Okay. So if the top has come down in general, which it has, 53.5% does nudge it down a little bit, then the need to swing at pitches at a certain level kind of goes away. So hitters can train themselves better, be like, I just don't have to swing up here that much. Like the chances are it's not going to be a strike much more often. And when that is removed from a hitter's head, that swing and miss up top there might go away, and pitchers might have to drastically change how they're using the top of the zone. So for example, guys like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, guys like Trevor May would be screwed in this current system. But good thing he's retired, Pitchers will need to bring the ball down more in general. And you know, what's the worst going to happen if you just drop the ball down into the middle of the zone with forcing a fastball? I don't know. I can't think of many downsides there. But we also have already seen the top kind of start to slowly be brought down already through changes in the standards in which umpires were held to last year. We talked about this before. The top of the zone was starting to kind of get taken away a little bit, and they were told to bring it down in their sights and start to call less up there. And as a result, this is shown through the data with the catchers who were so good at framing at the top of the zone were no longer getting that benefit of the doubt. Namely, big catchers like Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh in 2023 was one of the best strike stealers at the top of the zone in the league. He's a big guy. This feels really comfortable to him. It's right at his neck level. Like, he can frame that really well. And other guys also were good at it as well. Then in the last couple years, those same top guys all fell back to the mean because those high strikes, they just weren't getting them called anymore because the umpires were, instead of saying like, I'm going to give this to him because he received it well, or I think that was there, they're like, it probably wasn't. And they just called it a ball. And that was shown in that data. It was also shown in this data that Eno and Dan came up with as well, which was really fascinating. This is all right on right pitches, strikes in the strike zone called balls last year in 2025. There were 5,288 of them. So it is interesting to see that 68.6% of them were actually fastballs, which is interesting. So this is right-handed pitchers versus right-handed hitters. Okay, so this is from the catcher view. So imagine this right here is where the hitter's standing. If you notice something, a lot of calls being missed down and away, not as many calls being missed down and in. Now, the reason for that is umpires set up behind the hitter. It's to protect themselves from foul balls. They've always kind of shaded that way, but in the last 5, 6, 7 years, which I have also mentioned on the show several times, they've tucked themselves in even farther to where they are looking almost parallel the head with the catcher, and they are looking at the same thing they see, and they're kind of hiding behind them so they don't get hit by a 100-mile-an-hour fastball fouled off into their face. I totally get it. I wouldn't like that either. That means they can't see this very well, and a lot of times, let's say, use Cal Raleigh as an example again, the guy's big, and you can't see it. He's blocking you a lot of times. Also, there's an element where that is where like breaking balls are thrown a lot. So there's a bias here to where you get this angle and you feel like the pitch is moving away from you. So if you're looking from that angle, even fastballs look like they're moving away. And when pitches are moving away, you tend to be like, I think that might not have caught the edge. It's hard to call that. So a lot were missed here. But one thing you may have noticed too from what I just said about the high strike, whole lot of stuff being missed up top, and it's pretty much agnostic to what side of the plate it is. They were getting missed all the way across the top because they were told to drop the top of the zone a little bit, but the zones on TV and the classic zone itself hadn't really changed. So a lot of these, so the standard in which we had the box hadn't changed, but the standard what the umpires were looking for had. And so that's why we've seen a ton of those. So the catchers with the framing up top, that shows that it's getting missed a lot more. And also, they're just getting missed a lot more. So great pickup from Eno and from Dan and from Trent. That was a great pickup from them. So who will benefit the most now if the top of the zone goes away? So actually, there's another thing too, real quick, another type of pitch that was missed quite a bit. But this one makes a lot of sense. Of course, it is absolutely part of it. It's what we call freeze pitches, okay? So guys like Logan Webb, Aaron Nola, front door, back door, where you throw a pitch that looks like a ball, and then it comes back to be a strike right at the end. Those are called freeze pitches because you want the hitter to give up on them. That goes to say, like, you want whoever's watching the pitch with their eyes to give up on it. And sometimes that includes the umpire. So if you're freezing a batter, of course you're gonna freeze the umpire more often too. So those type of pitches are always risky because you're trying to get a pitch to be a strike where no one thought it was going to be one, and sometimes the umpire doesn't go with you. So of course those pitches are missed. Who's going to benefit the most from these changes or this stuff getting locked in? Well, one, guys like Logan Webb and Aaron Nola and Brady Singer and like Yoshi Yamamoto, guys who can throw two seams up and in and have it come back, and freeze guys. Zach Wheeler's a good example. There's a lot of guys that operate in that way. And if that is something you do, then you're going to be able to challenge stuff and get guys freeze pitches maybe will get called more often or get them right more often, and we'll see more guys taking chances there. Also, guys that live at the top of the zone with command will also benefit from this change to the strike zone. So, yes, the Trevor Mays of the world got tons and tons of chase up top. Maybe my chase starts to come down. I will get chased because at the end of the day, remember, high pitches, when not located very well, are very easy to hit really hard. So they're still going to get swung at. It's not like they're going to be like, no, I don't want high pitches at all. I'm just going to stop swinging at them. No, they're going to swing at them because high pitches oftentimes are very easy to barrel. They're easier to barrel than low pitches. So like you're still going to get lots of swings. It's just not as much, and it's not going to be such a wide range of pitches the guys feel like they have to swing at. So you're going to have guys with really good command that are able to elevate up and down. So guys that are good at that were George Kirby had a 112 location plus. He was the best at commanding the top of the zone. He's the best at commanding a lot of the parts of the zone, but he was. George Kirby could benefit from it. Tyler Mahle was one, which was interesting. I didn't see that coming at 111. Nick Pivetta, one of the best carry fastballs, I think the best carry fastball. He lives up there, but he's very good at hitting that top rail or being right below it because that's where his bread and butter is and commands it up there. He might benefit from this because he can command it better, but he has to make adjustments. Okay, and then we have Shotei Managa, another guy who loves to throw four seams up. Zach Wheeler, Logan Webb, Matthew Boyd, all guys with 107 location pluses that hit those spots as well. So guys who like live up there or live up and in, Matthew Boyd, for example, likes the four seams and two seams up and in. Manaya is another guy who'll do it up and in, right? These pitches will come back, stay on the top rail up top, up and in. And because they already command it well, maybe this lowering of the zone with guys taking more, they'll get more guys standing there and they'll still get the strike call. They might benefit, but for the most part, most guys with not great command at the top, which is most guys, are probably going to find that is now a little bit of a void, a little bit of a place that they can't just sit, because if they have to start incrementally lowering it, pretty soon you're going to be getting into the waist-high area, and if you get in the waist-high area, you're not going to see that ball for very long. And so don't be surprised if we see a little bit of an adjustment early in the year, probably not in spring because spring's kind of a crapshoot with everyone playing, but like early in the year, we might see a bump in power for a bit before the pitchers can adjust. That is going to be a likely outcome that happens. But overall, I believe that ABS is a net positive for the game of baseball, and I'm excited that they are implementing it. I think that it provides really cool strategic value. You have to think about your two challenges. It's going to be interesting that there's young guys versus old guys, veterans, on who gets to use them and when, if the dugout's going to dictate or not. Like, you got to be quick. You got to do these kind of things, and what the rules are going to be are going to coalesce around that. But there is one last thing. There was an unnamed coach that said there probably will be a fight over guys wasting challenges, with guys who haven't earned the right to use their challenges, just using them willy-nilly and screwing the team so they don't get to use them late. Like, what is going to be the strategy around it? I like all that stuff, but what I don't like is pitchers having to make massive adjustments without the pitch, especially people who live up there, and like that's where they've made their money. Now we're taking kind of an element of what makes them good just away. Like, that just, even if it's good for the game, even if it's the right thing to do, it still stinks either way. And I hate that my brethren have to make another concession in order to make the game more watchable. But like, then again, at the end of the day, I got out at the right time. Like, who kidding? Like, good job, smart guy. I don't have to deal with it. Good luck, guys. Good luck out there, I guess. Do we like these changes? Do we think this is an interesting way to approach it? Do we think this thing is going to actually be fair, or is going to help one side or the other? Just let me know in the comments. I just got to know what you guys think, because who cares what I think? It's about what you think.